Hello everyone. For those of you who I personally have not yet met, my name is Leora Houtman. I'm one of the nurse practitioners with the GI team in the celiac clinic here, and it's my pleasure to meet all of you. I have the great opportunity of welcoming our very special guest, the famous gluten-free globetrotter, Erin Smith. Erin was diagnosed with celiac disease over 30 years ago when the diagnosis was not as common as it was today. When Erin was a toddler, she was not growing or thriving and was finally diagnosed with celiac disease. At that time, she began her gluten-free lifestyle, and within weeks, she started to behave like a healthy toddler and continued to grow and develop appropriately. At that time, Erin and her family had to navigate the gluten-free world without support, information, or even the internet. Even as Erin got older, she found that at high school and college, leaders, staff, and students did not know very much about the gluten-free diet, and for many years, she had to manage on her own. Post-college, Erin moved to New York City, where with the help of the internet, she joined and led a gluten-free social group. In 2007, she started her gluten-free fun blog. A few years later, while traveling in the Czech Republic, she decided to start her gluten-free Globetrotter blog. It was here that she was able to combine her two passions, the gluten-free diet and traveling, to inspire and support others. I'm very excited to introduce Erin, who can share her experience, knowledge, recommendations, and a few traveling tips with all of us today. Welcome.
Thank you so much. As Leora said, my name is Erin. I'm very excited to be here. We're going to cover a lot today, but this is interactive, so if you have questions or if I ask a question, feel free to shout it out or raise your hand and we'll go through it. My topic today is how to plan a gluten-free vacation. And what we'll do is we'll go through just a brief introduction, some places that are better for people with celiac or a little more gluten-free friendly, accommodations, and then how to research and plan your trip, what to pack for food, and ways to enjoy your trip while you're there. So we'll start with who is Gluten-Free Globetrotter. And maybe because Leora gave an announcement, this is me when I was diagnosed. I was 2.5, 1981. Actually, Dr. Levine's friend diagnosed me, and the doctor at that time was younger than my parents. So I feel very lucky that I had an early diagnosis. Since my diagnosis, my sister has been diagnosed, my cousin has it, and we have other autoimmune diseases in our family. So I like to show this picture, especially to parents, because I know that you're always like, how is your kid going to grow up? And I would like to think I've grown up pretty normally. But this is me when I was little. So, and I have two websites, Gluten-Free Fun and Gluten-Free Globetrotter, and I'm here today to talk specifically about Gluten-Free Globetrotter. But on Gluten-Free Fun, I write a lot of product reviews, restaurant reviews, and with Gluten-Free Globetrotter, I try to give travel tips from around the world. I did run the New York City Celiac Disease Meetup Group for 10 years. I don't know if anybody's a current member. It still exists, but I moved to California in January. So I live in California now, and I ran that group here for 10 years. It's a social group. It's free to join. There are dinners. There are events. Actually today they're doing a gluten-free bakery tour on the Upper East Side. So I do encourage you to join. I can give you the website at the end, but it's free to join. There are not so many kid-centric events only because I don't have my own kids yet, and the organizer now doesn't have kids either. So if anybody wants to be a parent organizer, I know that Jessica, the group organizer, would be grateful. And then I just like to kind of start off by saying where I've been. I've been to 32 states, 20 countries, 3 continents, and I've always been gluten-free. I never took a vacation where I wasn't gluten-free because I was diagnosed so young. So I do like to show this and kind of give hope to people. When I moved to California, I drove cross-country, which was very interesting. There's not a lot of gluten-free food at rest stops in Arkansas, but you can make do, and we'll kind of go through some ways to find a gluten-free meal on the road. So can anybody think of maybe a place, oh wait, I jumped ahead a little bit, a place in the US that might be easy to find gluten-free food? Can anybody think of a place, a city? Yep. Yep. very good. Yep, that's actually where I start. So major cities. Major cities, especially New York, Chicago. In New York and Chicago, we're lucky to have some of the best doctors in the world. In Chicago, the University of Chicago has a celiac center. Here in New York, we have this center. There's another center uptown. But major cities are really a great place to start, in my opinion, to start traveling because there's a lot of awareness, there's a lot of demand, but also these are cities that really have foodie culture where people want to go to fancy restaurants, want to go to any restaurant. So I always suggest major cities first, but then some other places, Portland, Oregon and Austin, Texas, they are very food-centric cities. And there's lots of information out there. In Portland, actually, I'm going in 2 weeks and I'm really excited. To me, that's the most gluten-free friendly city in the whole country. I've been there many times. I worked there for 3 years. And there are, I think, maybe 7 gluten-free bakeries in Portland. And it's not weird there to be gluten-free. I mean, as it says, keep Portland weird. That's kind of the theme of Portland. But it's really a very gluten-free friendly city. Now Disney, I haven't been to Disney in more than 25 years, but maybe people here have been recently. I'm hearing very good things about Disney. There are websites dedicated to being celiac in Disneyland. So there's like WDW Celiac or something, but I'm hearing a lot of great things. Again, I haven't personally been. There's also Disney Cruises and there's a Disney resort in Hawaii. So you have options and I don't know, has anybody here been to Disney recently?
We went in May of 2015 and they were amazing.
Okay, yeah,
The chef actually comes to your table as soon as you sit down because you let them know in advance.
Yeah.
And they tell you exactly what options they have and they assure you that it's all separate. It was great. He ate everything.
Oh, good. I saw another hand. You guys been to Disney?
She wanted me to let you know that she went to Disney.
Oh, did you eat well?
We had lots of good food options.
Good, awesome. Okay, that's what I like to hear. Again, I think when I was in Disney, people had no clue what gluten-free even meant because I was 12, so it was a long time ago. And then international. So I know a lot of people might be nervous to travel internationally. And before Dr. Fresano left, we were actually talking about Europe. There's a lot of awareness in Europe about celiac disease, the gluten-free diet. And I was pleasantly surprised in Italy. You can actually buy gluten-free food in the pharmacy in Italy because it's your medicine. So Europe, they were way ahead of the US in terms of labeling. There's more awareness. And then I recommend Central and South America because in certain countries, wheat isn't really part of the diet. My fiance is from Mexico. You know, he doesn't eat a lot of bread. He eats a lot of corn, a lot of rice. Brazil, Costa Rica, Argentina also have, especially in Brazil and Argentina, there are national celiac groups in these countries that have worked really hard to pass labeling laws. I can't remember the year that Argentina passed these labeling laws, but it's a requirement for more than 10 years to label in Argentina. So it's really interesting, but also, you know, there's a lot of naturally gluten-free foods that they're eating, meats and you know, corn and in these Central and South American countries. Australia and New Zealand, I also suggest. I know it's really, really far away. I have a friend in New Zealand, and I think it's like a 20-hour difference in time or something. But these countries had the most stringent testing for gluten. So the US tests at 20 parts per million to label something gluten-free. Australia and New Zealand recently changed, I think, to a little bit higher, but they were at 3 parts per million. So nothing could be labeled gluten-free unless it tested 3 parts per million or less. So I find these countries to be welcoming to people with celiac disease because there's more awareness and there's better labeling. Another thing I will personally suggest, take a cruise. Now, I took a cruise on Norwegian Cruise Line many, many years ago, and they gave me this binder, and it was gluten-free, kosher, low sugar, low protein, all these different diets. And I ate so well on this cruise. They would bring me out bread all the time. And, you know, I got my own bread basket every single day. They just opened the package, gave it right to me. Has anybody been on a cruise here? Yeah? Did you eat gluten-free?
Well, she wasn't diagnosed
Oh,
at the time, but we went on the Disney.
You did? You went on a cruise? No? You eat gluten-free? Oh, good. All right. Awesome. And as you were saying before diagnosis, what I'm hearing now, especially, and this goes for anything, we'll get into this, is just letting, before you get on the ship, you start that conversation. And then there's a food captain on every ship. And then there's a, maitre d', and so we'll get into that a little bit more about the conversation, but cruises are getting to be better. It's a little intimidating since you are trapped on this boat, but cruise ships are becoming very accommodating, Disney cruise as well. And then this is, more specific for the parents, but I wanted to point out large hotel chains now are starting to really accommodate gluten-free. Both the Fairmont hotels and the Servi Group Hotel in Spain actually train the kitchens in all locations. They have a very specific gluten-free protocol for how to prepare gluten-free food. I've heard wonderful things about the Fairmont hotels. I read a lot of travel websites, and they're very accommodating. There's also these boutique hotels. I had the luxury of going to Arenas del Mar in Costa Rica. The owner of the hotel actually is from the US. His daughter has celiac. He brought in some people from Beyond Celiac, which used to be called National Foundation for Celiac Awareness. They trained the entire staff, and I ate gluten-free every day, and they were actually contemplating just turning the whole resort gluten-free and not telling anyone, because the food is so delicious anyway, and they don't eat a lot of bread in Costa Rica, so there wasn't a lot of bread on the menu anyway. I had all the fryers were dedicated gluten-free, and I ate nonstop that week. It was an amazing week. It's in the jungle, you can see monkeys, and you're just eating gluten-free. This place in Italy, my friend just went. Her name's Amy. She writes the Gluten-Free Family Chef, I think it's called. And she found this guest house in Italy, and it was totally gluten-free, everything. So she ate pasta and bread, and there's no gluten in the whole house. So every meal was gluten-free. And this exists. You have to do a little research, but there are hotels around the world that are gluten-free. And then I like to name these two places. So Fairview, Austin, I've been to. The Inn on Randolph, I haven't been yet. But in Fairview, Austin, the owners have autoimmune in their families, so they just turned the whole B&B gluten-free. And in the Inn in Randolph, the owner has Lyme disease, and she's been gluten-free for many years. There's never been gluten in the kitchen, and they keep winning awards, year after year. Again, they don't advertise it. I didn't know Fairview, Austin was gluten-free until I got there. So, and I'm happy, if I know people are taking pictures, I'm happy to send this to anybody who wants it at the end. So I think Kenza has it too. But I'm working on a guide right now. It's going to be a digital ebook eventually, and it's gluten-free bed and breakfast hotels in the United States and Canada. And these are gluten-free places or gluten-free accommodations. And then I'm working on how I'm going to rate, this, I guess I don't like to use the word safe, but the places that understand gluten-free better than just saying, sure, we have gluten-free, and then they give you a shared toaster. That's not okay with me. I have celiac, I know. So then if you're not comfortable planning your own trip, doing your own research, there are people that can plan it for you. These aren't really necessarily kids-specific groups. Bob and Ruth's tends to be an older group. Bob has celiac disease. They plan these tours around the whole world. They've been to China, they've been to India, they've been all over Europe. They do day trips and weekend trips in the US. But Bob and Ruth do all the research for you. There's also these culinary getaways. I don't know if anybody eats jovial gluten-free pasta, but they once a year host a gluten-free week in Italy, which is amazing. I mean, I would love to go one day. And then I met a chef in France, and she has been doing these gluten-free retreats in the French Alps. So one day I will go there too. But again, they go in ahead of time. They clean the whole kitchen top to bottom. They, in these places, there might be gluten present before, but they do as much as they can to remove the gluten from the kitchens and then have these theme weeks. There's also travel agents that specifically have experience. Leslie Hawk is one of the more popular. She, I think her is like gluten-free travel. I forget what her website is. There's a woman out of Chicago, and then out of New Jersey, this gluten-free travel group. Again, it's someone who eats this way and does all the research for you. And then me, I'm happy to help. I give tips all the time. I've planned itineraries for families. I'm not a travel agent. I just love researching. So I can help call ahead. I planned a trip for a family going to Atlantis in the Bahamas, and I spoke to all of the people, from check-in to the restaurant. I called ahead and spoke to everyone. At Atlantis, they actually give you a questionnaire before you book your trip, and you can fill out what any dietary needs. I should also mention, I have a severe shellfish allergy, so we can talk about other allergies as well, but I speak specifically as someone with celiac. So we talked a little bit about this. Before you go, you can do research. For those of you that help your parents plan or have an idea of where you want to go, research is key. Doing this before you leave, before you, aren't in front of a computer and really doing a lot of research, as you probably do anyway. But, research for a trip is key. And then making a map, actually. Okay, sorry. I thought it was out of order. Making a map. How many people know if their parents use GPS or a map to figure out where you're going in the car, if you have a car and don't live in Manhattan. But making a map, I think, is really important. You can use a tool like Google Maps, and you can actually save places on Google Maps. Great thing about Google Maps is you can also save it to have use when you don't have Wi-Fi or internet access. You can save it right onto your phone. Things that I include are restaurants, supermarkets, embassies if I'm out of the country, and also hospitals, just in case something happens. I was in Mexico last year in kind of a not so populated area. I got really sick from the water, but the first doctor I met was a house call doctor. He came to our house, and he never heard of celiac disease. He didn't understand what gluten was. He didn't want to treat me, so he didn't. The next day, I was still very dehydrated, very sick. I went to a hospital a little bit away from where we were, and they knew. But it was because I had researched ahead of time. I was also with someone from Mexico. I knew where to go, and it was. I think it's really important, even you, God forbid, you don't want anything to happen on your vacation, but I think it's important to know ahead of time, just in case. And hopefully you never have to use that. Calling ahead, like I said, doing your research, but also calling ahead. If you see there are restaurants near your hotel, near your resort, wherever you're staying, just call ahead and do that research before you go. You want to start that conversation before you go, and speak to the manager before you get there, just so you kind of have an idea where you can eat and if they're near your hotel, or speak to your hotel. I went to Italy a few years ago with my mom. I called ahead and emailed ahead. When I got there, the front desk had a gluten-free welcome basket for me, which was amazing. It was bread, it was cookies, it was pasta, everything was packaged. And then I was able to take that pasta with me when I went to restaurants in Italy. So you'd be really surprised at how accommodating people are, and just opening that conversation before you leave. Another thing, I don't know for parents if anybody uses OpenTable. So OpenTable is a website and an app, which I think, especially in New York, if you're trying to make a reservation, it's very helpful. But OpenTable.com is great because you can set up a profile, personal profile, and you put right in your notes section if you have allergies, food preferences. So my profile says I have celiac disease, I cannot eat gluten. I explain what gluten is, and then I say I have a shellfish allergy. So when you use OpenTable, you make your reservation, it goes right to the restaurant, and the restaurant also gets that note. And it says you have celiac disease, you can't eat this, and whatever your allergies are. So then when you check in at the restaurant, they see your reservation, they know that you have these dietary requirements. And then again, you want to talk to the manager and you want to talk to the chef. I mean, you can talk to the waiters and waitresses all you want, but you do want to talk to the chef. But you've already started that conversation. You're having that conversation, you're saying, through email. And this goes for any place, whether it's OpenTable you're using or if you're using, there's a few other apps, but kind of initiating that conversation before you even go out to eat. And then again, just kind of recapping, using gluten-free travel blogs. I am not the only one out there. There are many, many bloggers out there. You know, anytime I'm going somewhere, I research the city. 9 times out of 10, it's someone with celiac disease living in that city that gives me the best tips around. You know, they are living there. I'm going to Portland in a few weeks. I know Portland well, but I went to a rural, in my mind rural, but I went to St. John's, Newfoundland over the summer for the Canadian Celiac Conference. And it was like bloggers in that area, people on Twitter, people on Facebook. These are the people that helped me figure out where to eat when I was there. It was tremendously helpful. You know, connecting with other travelers on social media. Facebook is a great tool as well. Usually if there's a Facebook group for a city, I'll join that. And then it's people with celiac that are living there telling about where they eat, where they don't eat. Local support groups, they're helpful as well. You have a great support community here. I'm sure peers in here have been places you might want to go. Another suggestion is using review sites. If you search in Yelp or TripAdvisor, you'd be surprised. People put a lot of comments about celiac in TripAdvisor, whether it's a gluten-free restaurant or a hotel or a non-gluten-free restaurant that can accommodate. I would say with TripAdvisor and Yelp, as any review site, there's a lot of negative comments, but I think that's really helpful because it's like, I have celiac, don't ever eat here, I got really sick. Like, do your research ahead of time because then you know somebody else got sick there. And I find it helpful. I went to a place in Thailand and everybody online was saying, it's so great, they have gluten-free. I found a review and it said, not celiac friendly. So they had gluten-free, but you know, they just had no clue and they're using the same griddle. And so I thought I was gonna have gluten-free pancakes in Thailand and I didn't even risk it because I didn't want to get sick so far from home. The apps we talked about, and then gluten-free magazines. There are a lot of magazines out there. Every single gluten-free magazine writes about travel or a major city every month, so, or whenever they publish. Somebody was asking me a little bit about traveling internationally. So there are these translation cards. So, and actually I use these in New York too. I have a friend that speaks Mandarin fluently, but we were going out to eat in Chinatown, which I was very nervous about. I brought a translation card in Mandarin and my friend did all the explanation. I ended up with just steamed vegetables because they were scared to feed me. I was scared to eat there. But these translation cards are great because these say in whatever language you need what gluten-free means, what celiac is. These cards here are actually the ones I used in Thailand, and I paid for these. This is selectwisely.com, but they're called severely worded. So it basically says, I will die if I eat this, because I didn't want to risk it. I was in Thailand almost 3 weeks, and it's like, you know, well, these ones, the translation is here. I had another one. It was like, you know, get me immediate assistance if I eat this. So this was for shellfish, fish, and wheat. I can eat fish, but I didn't know if it would be lost in translation, the difference between shellfish and fish. But there are a number of companies that you can get these custom made. You can get them laminated. This is celiactravel.com. Last I checked, they had over 60 languages. You could just print them off. When I went to the Czech Republic, I had a stack. I brought it with me. I've had restaurants turn me away in other countries. In Thailand, they said no. They were too nervous from this. But I would rather someone say no than for them to say yes, and then you get there and you get sick. I have a reaction within a half an hour, so I will know if I get gluten. So these are great. I have a long list on my website, but there are many companies now that do this. Another thing that I'm starting to see more of my friends is getting the Medic Alert bracelets. And I don't know if anybody here wears them for any reason, but I have a very good friend who has celiac and a peanut allergy, but she has one for each. So, you know, explaining that it's celiac. And I think what I'm seeing in traveling, it's not as common because, you know, the US has a lot of allergies, but just kind of having that like Medic, it has a little symbol on it. So that's something you might want to consider. So, can anybody say gluten-free in a language other than English? Does anybody know how? No? All right. So what I would suggest is if you are going to another country, learn how to say gluten-free. So in Spanish, I should know because my fiance speaks Spanish fluently. But in Italian, it's senza glutine. I think sans gluten is gluten-free. But I think starting to learn the words, learn a few key words in other languages if you are going to a country or a restaurant where they don't speak English. I don't even know what all these languages are. I made this and it was an app online, but learn key words. And this goes, I actually learned this early on in my travels, is just even learning how to say hello, please, and thank you in the language of the country you're going to. But as someone with celiac, you want to learn how to say these words as well. So, use Google Translator or another translator tool and kind of help you out. So, gluten-free travel food. Raise your hand if you pack food before you go anywhere. Right. I came here today from a hotel on 42nd Street and I have food in my bag, so I get it. What do you like to bring with you? Anybody have a favorite snack? Pizza? You travel with pizza? That's good. Anybody else? Yeah?
Tortillas, she likes.
Tortillas.
She likes the popcorners.
Oh yeah, popcorners, yeah. What is it? Oh, okay, yeah, yeah. So I like to call these foods the non-smelly foods. So cut up fruits and vegetables, pretzels, chips, crackers, bars, pouches of almond butter or peanut butter if you don't have an allergy. These are the foods that pack really easily in a carry-on bag, in a cooler in the car. Bars, they think everybody has at least one or two, probably Lara bars or some other kind of bars in their bag at all times. And then I have the other foods, which I like to say smelly foods a little, because they might smell a little strong to have on the airplane, but hard-boiled eggs, tuna, gluten-free jerky, if you eat that, quinoa cups. So I think being prepared. The quinoa cups is something I recently discovered. At like TJ Maxx or Marshalls or Home Goods, they have these pre-made quinoa cups and you can just eat it. You don't have to heat it. It has the flavoring. Again, if you're kosher, you're looking for these kosher foods, but packing ahead is essential in my opinion. It doesn't matter if you've been celiac a day or 30 years like me, but it's so important because you never know. You just never know where you might be stuck. You don't have food. On the airplane, there are gluten-free meals on the airplane. I would say if I've had maybe like 3 good gluten-free meals. It's usually a rice cake, which isn't a meal. Some airlines are better than others. I would say by far Emirates Air was fantastic. I was shocked at the meal I got. It's very clearly labeled. Everything was still in a package if it wasn't cooked. I think I had fish, but with airport meals, I would say call ahead, ask when you sit down in your seat. They'll probably check with you anyway, but always bring backup. You don't want to be hungry. Thailand is very, very far, and I had many hours on the plane. And I ate well because I flew a nice airline, but you just want to be, prepared. Oh, I show this. This was just a little bit of what I brought to Thailand because I was so nervous that I'd be there 3 weeks. You see there's like pop chips and jerky. One thing I will tell you, which I learned the hard way, is always bring extra Ziploc bags. I had bread that ants got into, so I had no bread for the rest of the trip. So, bring Tupperware, bring Rubbermaid containers, bring bags, but bring food. I mean, people probably laugh. When I go somewhere, I bring food. When I come home, my souvenirs are all food from other countries. So I actually flew back from visiting with family in August, and my mom had given me like 5 different new baking mixes, and they stopped me because I had all this powder in my bag, and they're like, why do you have all this? I'm like, oh, because I like to bake, and but it just seems very weird when you have like, bags of flour in your bag, and, but yeah, don't be, I would say it's better safe than sorry. One thing I will mention, which I don't think I have in here anymore, and a parent gave me this tip, is get a doctor's note. I have celiac disease, I have to eat this way, this is why I have all this food, just in case. So TSA doesn't confiscate it. I mean, people with diabetes or I have pretty bad asthma. I use the nebulizer, so I had this machine with me with these little vials of liquid medication, and I always carried a note for that, but it was after that I realized maybe I should think about carrying a note for the food. So just something to think about. I know doctors are here, so you can talk to your doctor about that. And then we talked a little bit about this before, but labeling around the world. So how many people have seen this on their food? Have you seen this? Yeah. So this is pretty standard in the US. This is the certified gluten-free label. Nobody should be putting this on their food unless they're actually certified by the GFCO, which is the Gluten-Free Certification Organization. You have to go through testing. You are monitored at least once a year. So if you see this and you have a problem, then I say you should A, contact the company, but B, also contact the FDA, because they're using this label illegally if they have gluten in there. So just keep in mind, this is kind of the standard label in the US now. But then these are the labels from kind of around the world. This is Argentina. And I just give these as an example because they exist in other countries. This is Argentina. Another one used in the US. Up there is the Canadian Celiac Association gluten-free label. Again, in Canada, if you use that label, you're being held to the standards of the Canadian Celiac Association. And then this is a common one, the bottom right, from Europe. So they call, you'll see like there's a little bit of crossed out wheat in various ones, but again, if you're going to a country, you might want to look up and see what the gluten-free label might be in that country. Another thing I would mention, like I said earlier, about the words and the food, I was in Prague in the Czech Republic, and the first ingredient was wheat starch with a little asterisk in Czech. Now, mind you, I was at a health food store, so I asked the girl who spoke English, but there is this gluten-free wheat starch that's used in Europe sometimes. And for me, the word wheat is like warning. So I did not buy that bread. But I didn't even know. I didn't know gluten-free wheat starch in Europe was a thing. So I did see the label, whichever one, I forget which one, but it's something to think about and just have this like, okay, well, there's different rules in different countries. It's not standard around the whole world. So keep that in mind. So travel tips. Again, this is a great mom tip I learned. Frozen grapes. They keep your food cold, and then you can eat them. So, so if you have a little lunch bag, I would say sometimes if you're flying, you can't take an ice pack because when it melts, it's liquid. So sometimes they'll take it away. It depends when you go through security, who's looking in your bag. So grapes are good. I learned the hard way. Frozen sponge really needs to be triple bagged. I had one leak all over my carry-on. So. But grapes are great because you can eat them. They're gluten-free. They stay frozen for a long time, and they keep the rest of your food cold. So that's just a little tip. Like I said, Ziploc bags. Another thing which I think is really great, and I did this once, is if you're going away for an extended time, whether you're going to, down the shore or to another country, ship food ahead of time. And, it's waiting for you. I went to Texas, and there used to be a company which doesn't exist anymore, but they made these snack boxes, which are kind of like the membership boxes, but they were specific for travelers. So when I checked in, there was a box there with my name on it, and it was all gluten-free food. So you can do that. You can do it if you're going to camp, if you're going to stay with relatives in another state and you don't want to carry everything. Just ship your food. It's already there. You don't have to worry about finding a supermarket when you get there. So this is one thing I kind of alluded to before. So build a snack meal is what I call finding what you can to eat. Going to a supermarket, going to a convenience store that might sell a banana, an apple, a piece of cheese, a hard-boiled egg, but being able to kind of pull things together that are gluten-free, either naturally, some, even Target, will sell little things of chopped up apples or vegetables. Those are naturally gluten-free. They're packaged. Sometimes they'll say gluten-free on the side, but being able to pull things together, not just eating chips or crackers as a meal, because that's not a balanced meal. And I know there are nutritionists and dietitians here, so they can kind of give you ideas, but you can make it happen. Like I said, you know, at a rest stop across the country, in rural, wherever, it's really hard. But with a piece of fruit and a boiled egg, which usually come prepackaged, I had a piece of cheese, I had some nuts in the car, but building these snack meals. So if you don't have anything, you know, you can make it happen. Maybe take a little bit of creativity, but, and then this one, which I thought was really interesting, and I never did this personally, but using the hotel room coffee pot to make things. So soup, you know, taking canned soup and pouring it in and then boiling it there. Hot cereal, you know, if you are eating, you know, there's like buckwheat groats or whatever, you know, making hot cereal. Somebody told me they once boiled hot dogs in the coffee pot. I wouldn't personally do that, but using the tools you have. You can also, in a lot of hotels, ask ahead for a microwave and a refrigerator. So that's something else. Before you check in, call ahead and ask, and they can 9 times out of 10 bring in a little mini fridge. If you want to use the coffee pot, that's great. It's up to you. Okay, so when you get to your vacation or wherever you're traveling to, things to do. So one thing I always say is use the same smarts about gluten-free that you would when you're at home. Ask questions. I know we were talking, always ask questions. I don't care where you are, if you're across the street here or you're in Europe, you know, start that conversation early and ask a lot of questions. Don't be shy about it. I have to say that I was very shy. Didn't want anybody to know I was gluten-free because I didn't know anyone else until I was 14 who was celiac. I didn't want to talk about it. Now as an adult, I know that I'm my own advocate and I have to ask these questions. Now you have your parents to help you, but at the end of the day, it's how you're gonna feel, whether it's your belly or your head or whatever, it's how you're gonna feel after you eat something that's questionable. So ask questions and be smart about it. And the same way you would ask at home, do it when you're away. Another thing I like to do is go to farmers markets. If you go to a farmers market, whether it's here in Union Square, there's fruit, there's vegetables, and see what's there. It's really interesting to go to another country and see the fruits. I learned in Thailand that there are things I never even have seen in my life, dragon fruit or durian, these crazy big, huge, smelly fruits, but they're naturally gluten-free. So just do some exploring. Also supermarkets. I know you said you've been to Ireland. I find like Marks and Spencer's and Tesco are fantastic. They've had a gluten-free line for a very long time, and they will have a wide variety of gluten-free foods that you probably haven't seen in the US. So that's why I said my souvenirs are gluten-free. When I went to Italy and I found that you can buy gluten-free food in the pharmacy, I bought tons of snacks to bring home with me because they were gluten-free and I knew I couldn't find them in the US. So a cooking class, and so I will say cooking class with a little bit of caution because you are using a kitchen that's probably shared. There are gluten-free cooking classes that exist. I know you guys are going to do some cooking here, but I took a cooking class overseas, and the one thing I liked is that they made sure my whole area was clean for me, but I had full control over my ingredients. So I made my whole dish. It was kind of a stir fry, and then I knew what was in there. People around me were using sauces that I didn't know, but I knew that my dish was gluten-free. So that might be something fun. Did anybody here ever take a cooking class? Yeah, I know we have someone who likes to make guacamole back there, so. Okay, so, and then, you know, see the sights. You're on vacation, have a good time. If you want to connect with other locals. And my biggest tip for everybody, you're on vacation, you want to have fun. You don't want to worry. You want to do your research ahead of time, and you want to have fun on your vacation. You don't. I know it's stressful to plan. I know what my parents went through. I know what I go through. But you want to have a good time. And you, again, I can't emphasize enough. You want to do your research ahead of time, so you're not sitting there in your hotel 24/7. Like, what am I going to eat? Where am I going to shop? And then just really quick, just once you get home, what to do. Share your stories with your friends. You know, here today, I know we're gonna do some activities with food, but like, if you have somewhere awesome you went that you can eat gluten-free, you know, tell your friends about it. Tell your doctor or your nurse or your dietitian, and then they can tell the next person. So I think that's something great. Again, parents, you can write a review of your own personal experiences. Think about your next vacation and be proud of yourself. If you have that packet, I gave everybody a Gluten-Free Globetrotter certificate, so you can consider yourself world travelers now. And then I like to show this one because elephants are gluten-free too, and that made me very happy. I actually ate a lunch, a special gluten-free lunch in Thailand, and they wrap it in a banana leaf, and then afterwards you feed the banana leaf to the elephant. So he ate my leftover wrapper, but and that's the end of my presentation. If anybody has any questions? Yeah? Oh, thank you.
A lot of pizza stores are now carrying pizza shops are carrying gluten-free pizza. Obviously, it's baked in the same oven. So how are you supposed to know? Just gauge their reactions. Wait till your next, blood test and see if it's still good. Like,
I mean, personally, I feel like pizza is one of those kind of risky things, because
they're definitely gluten-free.
Yeah, I would, right, there's gluten-free. Right, but one thing you have to think about is how they're preparing it, right? So if it's a long assembly line and they're just moving it down the line, there's cross-contamination the whole way down the line. Also, how they put the sauce on. If you dip the sauce in once and put it on a regular pizza, you dip it in again and put it on gluten-free pizza, then it's contaminated. All of the toppings, same thing. If you're in a place that's assembly line, I think off the top of my head, like Chipotle, asking people, telling people you have you're celiac and that's why you're eating this way. They change their gloves. In some places, I've actually seen completely separate prep area where they actually use different color utensils. Like there are these purple kits now they sell to restaurants. So. Looks like you guys know, but that is the gluten-free kit. With pizza, I would say it's a whole process, start to finish. So
is the oven itself risky if they're baking pizzas at the same time? Is that a concern?
Well,
or just the preparation?
I think it could be a concern. Yeah. At the same time, the prep, the pan. I don't know if any of the staff here, the pan they're using, was it used before? If it's just covered in foil, but yeah.
Experience for Molly loves pizza that it's the prep, and it's some places we know that we can go to places where they do it in the basement. They take it down, they wear gloves, they do it in the basement of a restaurant. They have fresh sauce. Toppings are all not contaminated.
The prep, I know there's like challah pizza, which is really good.
Again, one place that we found that is very conscious of it, if you like pizza, is California.
Oh, really?
Very corporate policy.
Yeah, okay.
So they're very conscious, and we'll get a few of them.
Yeah.
And then we'll come over, they'll walk you, we'll actually have a separate area.
Okay.
Different color gloves.
Yeah, I think it's knowing the place you're going to, knowing
How do you know how sensitive you are? People ask me, is she highly sensitive or not? I don't really have any way of knowing except for the symptoms.
I would say I'm non-medical staff, so I would say talk to one of the staff afterwards because I don't really know how. I know my sensitivity. My sister has celiac and has completely different reactions. We can eat the same exact meal and I will be sick and she won't. So it's really hard to say. It's so individualized. So any more questions? Comments about gluten-free vacations? No? Did anybody have a great place they went on vacation? Besides Disney? Yeah?
We went to North Carolina and we went to this restaurant that was completely gluten-free.
Oh, really?
They're just open up the name.
Oh, awesome.
Apparently, I own 3 or 4 restaurants in the area.
Oh, that's great. And it was totally gluten-free. Yeah, that's great. I will say, just one quick thing. In New York now, I have a list on my website that I just updated, but there are like now 7 gluten-free bakeries, at least 2 which are kosher, and there are something like 15 restaurants that are actually 100% gluten-free, which you wouldn't necessarily know. The Little Beat is around here, not too far, and it's kind of fast casual. They're actually totally gluten-free. The Little Beat Table is their fancy restaurant. Senza Gluten is totally gluten-free, but they exist. And I think in every city you can find at least a bakery, if not a bakery and a restaurant. That's probably a major city, like you said, major city. So any other questions?
I have an app on my phone called Find the Gluten-Free.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that app is excellent. Wherever you are, it uses GPS location.
Yeah.
And it helps us out a lot.
Yeah.
I will say with Find Me Gluten-Free, that's a great app too. I use it all the time. One thing I've noticed is that some of their reviews are really outdated, and either a restaurant is closed or they no longer have the same chef, or it's paid advertising. So like if you type in Midtown, they'll give you a place in Hoboken, and it's like, well, you're not necessarily gonna go right to Hoboken. But be really careful. You can look down at the reviews and they actually have the dates on there. So I went to Santa Barbara on Labor Day weekend and I used that and I ate so well. One was for this random hole-in-the-wall taco place, which happened to be 100% gluten-free, and I found it on that app. So yeah, that's a great app. There's also apps in different countries, maybe not in English. There's an app by the Italian Celiac Association that lists restaurants all around Italy, and Dr. Shar, which is Shar Foods, if you know Shar, they also have an app called Gluten-Free Road. So yeah, that's a great tip. Thank you.
Yeah.
I think using more than one tool is helpful. Also, again, like if you're reading magazines, noting down places. And actually, Asheville, North Carolina is supposed to be really great for gluten-free as well. I haven't been there yet, so. Sorry, you had a question over here?
No, I just had a statement. This summer we went to Sesame Place and I was worried, of course. I was like, oh no. And we went to, there was only one restaurant in Sesame Place and they had pizza, but literally the pizza was wrapped in its own thing and they gave you your own cutter. They stuck it in the oven in the wrapping and then you got it back in the wrapping. So she unwrapped it herself, cut it herself, so that's one thing I have to say. Nearby, that's a really good place to go to, but it's just that one item.
Yeah.
So try not to stay there for dinner, just kind of when we go for lunch, or you're going to be eating pizza twice.
Right. And one other thing I'll say, I mean, in New York, we're so lucky to have so many options, but there's some chain restaurants that are really good. P.F. Chang's, I mean, there's a P.F. Chang's. I was in an airport recently, and they have gluten-free. The menu, they label the dish. Red Robin, I know we don't have any here, but Red Robin, for the most part, I mean, I saw a talk with their corporate chef, and they have a lot of training. Again, I think it's kind of familiarizing, maybe California Pizza Kitchen. So I've never actually been to California Pizza.
What is it?
Cheesecake Factory.
Cheesecake Factory, yeah?
After this, we're going to go to a gluten-free bakery called Toulouse.
Awesome. That's good.
I haven't been to Toulouse, but I love By the Way Bakery. I don't know if anybody's been there. On the Upper West Side and Upper East Side.
What is it?
By the Way Bakery?
It's gluten-free, dairy-free, kosher. I'm actually going wedding cake tasting, so I'm excited because I'm going to have a gluten-free wedding, hopefully. So you can't really see it here, but my website is www.glutenfreeglobetrotter.com. I'll be here the rest of the day. I'm on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. But if you guys have questions, email me anytime. So.